Well, welcome this evening, everyone. Delighted you could be here this evening to join us. People are just hopping on, and we'll give people about a minute or so we can log in. I think we've got about 51 people who are joining us so far this evening, and we're pretty excited to be having this conversation, and it seems like the community is too. We know that sometime soon we'll be able to hop in there and have this in person, and I think we're all very hopeful that the pandemic is receding, and we'll be able to do community engagement and participation like we used to. So my name is MJ Adams. I'm the Director of Community and Economic Development for the City of Greenfield. This evening, we are doing the deliberate downtown reboot, and our goal tonight is really to bring everybody up to speed. We were about to do this effort about 2 years ago, and COVID came and started visiting with us, and that sort of caused us to have to push the button on pause, but it didn't push the stop button. So what we're doing tonight is really giving you a little background and then bringing you up to speed on what's been going on over the past 2 years as we've prepared to come out of this pandemic and to breathe life back into our wonderful downtown. The goal tonight is really it's presenting a lot of information. I want to share with you that this meeting will be recorded. There will be an opportunity for question and answers at the end of the presentation. But I also want to invite everybody. I know how people like to talk about things and sink their teeth in to have a conversation about things that is going on in downtown Greenfield. And so we're going to invite you to all join us at the Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee meeting on February 24th, late afternoon, early evening. It'll be on the city calendar. And the first half of that meeting will be dedicated to really talking through, sharing information, talking more about what you're going to see and hear about tonight. I also want to share with you that this is not a done deal. I mean, there is not something that is carved in stone in terms of what we're doing. The idea is this is a conversation that will be going on through the next couple of months. And actually, some of the things that you see on you'll see in the presentation will actually take several years to put into place. But tonight is a time for us to sort of all come up to speed on where we are at this moment in time and to understand moving forward how we're going to do that. So that said, I'm going to hand off the presentation to kick us off with Mayor Roxann Wedegartner. Mayor?
Hi there. Good evening, everyone. It's really wonderful to be here, and I see a lot of familiar faces. Nice to see all of you. Some of you go all the way back to when we did the Sustainable Greenfield Master Plan. So great to see you. And didn't we all have a particularly wonderful, if you were in town, weekend with Winter Carnival this weekend? There was so much going on, and that's really kind of sets the stage for what we're trying to do here. It really is, because you could see how much fun we all had. And so I talked to so many people who had come from out of town just to come here to do some winter activities, have some winter fun in a nice open social session. So good for Greenfield and good for Christy Moore and the rec department and all of the departments in the city of Greenfield who helped make that happen. So to get on to business for tonight, I'm going to take us in the Wayback Machine back in time. In the mid-2000s, I was the chair of the Greenfield Planning Board, and we had the opportunity during that time to create another master plan for Greenfield. It happens, every 10 years or so. And we created the planning board members at the time, which I was leading the effort, led the Sustainable Greenfield Master Plan process. And I didn't want a master plan that sat on a shelf, that was completed by all the little steps that you have to go to, and it had all the right sections and so forth. I wanted something that was a living document that we could refer to, and above all, that to the extent that we could, finances being what they are, and so forth, we could implement it Hence, that gave us the Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee. And Hannah probably has a better recollection than I do, and maybe some others here, as to exactly when it held its first meeting, but I've got to believe it was somewhere around 2012, 2011, 2012, 2013, somewhere in there. So they've been doing great work implementing many parts of the plan. We started, I think, primarily with energy savings, the whole groundwork, laying the groundwork for sustainability. But many parts of this plan focus on Greenfield's downtown, and also on the Main Street, and not just Main Street, but a significant section of the Main Street infrastructure. How do we make it safer for pedestrians, cyclists? When I mean cyclists, I mean people on bicycles, primarily, and ultimately for drivers, because I think we need to factor them in. They're going to be we live in Franklin County. You're going to need a car a whole lot of the time to get around, and we are the hub of Franklin County. So we want to make sure that at least as you're coming into Greenfield, you have a ready and very well designed Main Street infrastructure. And a lot of the plan focuses on improving public spaces in downtown, and also on redeveloping our underutilized buildings. So the planner in me makes me think it's time again to update the downtown revitalization plan. And we have been, while COVID has been going on and kept us all inside, as MJ, I think, alluded to earlier, we haven't just been sitting around wondering what to do next. We have been conducting a lot of investigation into what makes a revitalized downtown. And it is such a good time to be doing that, because there is a great deal of funding out there for this. So to the greatest extent we can, we will utilize, as I say, other people's money to make this happen. So I look forward to MJ's presentation tonight. And as always, I'm available through email. Occasionally I can get on the phone for your questions, and always we pay attention to your comments. So I'm going to turn it over, I think, to Hannah.
Thank you so much, Mayor. And thank you everyone for coming out tonight. My name is Hannah Rechtshaffen. I'm the chair of SGIC, the Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee that the mayor spoke of. I'm actually one of the newer members and very proud to be the chair, and all the rest of our incredible members are in the room, and we just welcome 2 new members who are going to be joining us this month for the first time. So it's really exciting to be rebooting this now. So I don't know how many folks who are in the room were at our event in 2020. It was meant to be just a kickoff of a great series of conversations like this one, I believe in February of 2020, and it was called a Deliberate Downtown. We gathered at Hawks and Reed in person, if we can all take our minds back to that for a second. And it was an amazing conversation. We had so many community members in the room. And one of the things that we had been focusing on, if we can all think back to what was going on at this time, there was a lot of momentum downtown, similar to how it is now. And so we went through the master plan at that time and pulled out every mention of the downtown and really focused ourselves on a framework of what the master plan had to say about the downtown, so that we were sure that we were keeping those points in front of everyone who had hands in what was happening. So having the community involved was a crucial part of that. And then COVID hit, and as both MJ and the mayor mentioned, a lot has been happening. But I think as we can all really feel into right now, it was tough to keep going directly as we had been. So we're really excited to be bringing this conversation back around, because we got amazing feedback from everyone who attended that night, and we put things up on our social media to get more. You can see a photo of the Post-it notes that people filled out about the things that mattered the most to them in the downtown, and we compiled it, and we were all set to hand that feedback wherever it needed to go when we hit the pause button. So tonight we're going to reboot, get back to the conversation about downtown, starting with a really fantastic and really in-depth update from MJ about everything that's happened in the intervening 2 years since we gathered last. So as MJ said, we are limited on time tonight. There will be a Q&A at the end, but if your question doesn't get answered, or if you're a slow processor like me and you think of a question later, please feel free to email any of us, and also feel free to attend our SGIC meeting on February 24th. That's a Thursday at 5 p.m. You can find the link on the town website. You'll also be able to find the video recording of tonight's session on the Community and Economic Development page on the website. I hope that that's right. So please share it, encourage people to watch it, and stay involved in the conversation, because it is ongoing, and there are a lot of things that are happening in Greenfield as we hopefully come out of what has been a really trying time. So thank you all so much for joining us. I'll hand it back to MJ. I hope I said all the things.
Yes, you did. And so as Hannah and the mayor said, this didn't drop from the sky. This actually is the deliberate downtown, the downtown revitalization update is coming out of a lot of ongoing community work that started a long time ago in Greenfield, got more formalized with the Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Plan back in 2014. And has been advancing through the regular and routine work of the Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee in partnership with all the departments and all the staff and the community boards and commissions and everybody who puts their shoulder to the wheel here in Greenfield to make it a better place. So I'm going to be doing a recap of some things that you might have seen in the past 2 years. Even though we were in lockdown and not able to be in person, we did try to keep information flowing out. And our goal tonight is really to make sure everyone is aware of all the things that have happened in the past. So if some of you have seen some of this already, that's great. If it's new to some of you, that's great. Like I said, I think the idea is to get everyone to the same place of understanding what's the background information that we've been using to help advance and formulate where we want to go with this process. As Hannah said, we did this wonderful event. We actually did 2 events in February 2020. We had Dar Williams, who came and sang and talked to us about the importance of arts and cultures in revitalizing small towns. And then we had our wonderful Deliberate Downtown event. We were all really excited about that. We gathered the information together, and then we had to sort of switch gears. But what we had done at that point already is that we had sought some financial assistance from the state to actually do sort of a market analysis. What were the details and the data? What was going on in our downtown district? And so in the spring and summer of 2020, we were working with a consultant who started to do and pull together the information about a business district assessment and a market analysis, which we would use as a good grounded data that would help inform us where we should be spending our time and energy and focus. And while that was going on, clearly we came into the summer of 2020 and we realized, even though I remember talking with someone initially when COVID hit, and we said, oh, this will be 2 months. That was optimistic. But so we knew in the summer of 2020, we needed to take some temporary measures because everyone was witnessing the impact that this was having on our downtown business community, and also trying to figure out what we could do to help people hold the edges together till we knew how we were going to come out the other end. So in the summer of 2020, we implemented outdoor dining. We'd been talking about doing it for a while, and then suddenly we were doing it. And so the mayor's office, chief of staff, the licensing commission, the board of health, we all worked together to help local restaurants figure out how to set up dining operations outside. And then we also, at the same time, we're looking for financial assistance for our small businesses. So we worked with the CDC and with our block grants and with our other partners who provide economic assistance, and we set up some micro enterprise and small business grants that have been out there, and to, like I said, really help people access that which was being made available, in anticipation that this was going to be a little longer than 6 weeks or 2 months, that this was going to be a little bit more enduring of a challenge for us, and that we had something pretty special here in Greenfield, and we wanted to hang on to it. So we were doing the study, and the study that I mentioned was happening, and we got the results of that back in January 2021. We did a presentation on this back a while ago. There's a very robust document that is on my webpage, the city's webpage, Community and Economic Development, if you would like to read through the details of it. But it really took a look at a number of things. And the summary of findings is that, that we have a great downtown, a very walkable commercial district. We knew how many commercial units we had. We knew how many vacancies we had at that point. And Wilson's had just closed up, and we were all wondering what that was going to mean in terms of the impact of our downtown. We knew that we had great proximity to Route 91 and Route 2, and that we are the commercial hub for Franklin County. We also took a look at our business mix and all the features there, and really looked at the different assets and items and different type of establishments we had in the downtown, really getting a sense of what the flavor of our downtown was. Doing this really to see what our strengths were, but also to start taking a look and to see what our weaknesses were. Were there gaps here? Were there opportunities here that we could look at and recruit people in to fill? We took a look at business conditions. Really had they actually took an immediate look at what was going on with the COVID impact and how it was affecting our downtown area. And our downtown is a major employment area. Clearly, when everyone was not coming into their work sites and were working from home, it was having spin-off effects on our downtown. We all know that. And the goal was to try to get our arms around of what does that mean, and how do we hold the edges together till we come out of this? And you can see that there are a number of COVID had a very significant impact on our downtown businesses. But despite the pandemic happening, we had new businesses that were flourishing and starting to pop up in downtown Greenfield. Plum came and took a vacant storefront, transitioned it into a beautiful little store. We've got a new restaurant, Wild Roots came, and Parker on Main, and Nim's Nails. We had a number of small businesses that were starting to see opportunity and came and started to set up shop in our downtown. One of the most important things we did in this is we took a look at the business location satisfaction and desired improvements. And this really caused us to take a look at what the business community, how the business community felt about downtown Greenfield as a business location, and what the advantages were and what some of the challenges were. And then what we looked at was people who use our downtown. What does the customer want? What are their preferences? Where do they go shopping if they're not shopping in Greenfield? What do they visit when they come and visit downtown? What do they like about downtown? What do they find that they would like to see different in downtown? And what are some opportunities that might present themselves if we were to encourage new things to happen in Greenfield? What would attract more people to come and use our downtown as our commercial center? And then there was some recommendations about what we should be thinking about for future actions. That downtown users really like the outdoor dining. They wanted to see an improved streetscape, which means what's the feel of the downtown environment look like as you're walking down the sidewalks, as you're parking, as you're riding your bike, as you're crossing the street. How does that feel? How safe does it feel? How comfortable does it feel? How enjoyable does that feel? And then we also saw that a number of the downtown businesses and the downtown users actually shared a lot of the same goals: the improved streetscape, the outdoor dining, and the additional community events and cultural activities. And then we looked at sort of the broader market conditions. Greenfield, as I said, is the commercial hub for the Franklin County. And we take a look at our resident market segment and non-resident market segments. And that's a much more detailed study. It's several pages. You can read through and see who comes to what area can we serve, what's the opportunities out there, and what should we be thinking about in terms of attracting new businesses and new opportunities into Greenfield so that we will have more foot traffic, more lively downtown, more activity, more economic activity, more employment, more revenue generated. So that was sort of the summary that came out of the initial business report that was done. And then we went into the summer and fall of 2021. And again, we were seeing that we were going to spend another summer with some implications from COVID, still visiting our downtown. And so we ramped back up. We did outdoor dining again. Some of our outdoor dining folks upgraded what they were doing in terms of their outdoor dining setups. We also tried experimenting with Court Square and thought, we would give it a shot and see some of the things that we'd been talking about back in 2017. Does it make sense to see how this might work? So we put a pilot up, and we got very substantial community input. What I say is that in Greenfield, people don't hesitate to share their opinion and feedback. And so, and again, we tried things that were working. We wanted the farmers market to stay there and to remain intact. It's actually a touchstone that people come from all over the area to go to the farmers market. And then we tried some new things. The pedestrian plaza, which was, we blocked it off from traffic, and then we set up tables, and we realized that what was critically important and what was missing was some sort of anchor activity. So when the food truck started operating out of the Court Square, everyone started to really recognize that you can't just have a pedestrian plaza. You actually have to program the space and make it lively and interesting and attractive. And I think those were the lessons we learned and will continue to learn. And then we continue to see what other opportunities we have. We had the LL Bean Boot came and parked there and had a little pop-up shop. And then this past weekend, just, some wonderful pictures of how Court Square came alive with an ice bar and a toboggan run and fire dancers. So it just shows you we've got a great town common, and we can use that much more robustly than we have. And our challenge will be to figure out a way to do that well. And then even though we had already done a market study assessment, the state had decided that they were going to make a real commitment to helping downtowns come back to life and to recover from COVID. So the state initiated what they call the local rapid recovery planning process and worked with us to identify things that we were doing and that the community wanted. And so we started moving forward, and they had a number of findings. Clearly, they looked at the physical environment, the business environment, the customer base, and the administrative capacity. And out of that, they made a series of recommendations that had to do with 5 different sections: the public realm, the private realm, what we were doing in terms of revenues and sales, what our administrative capacity was for our downtown, and what our tenant mix was. And out of that conversation last summer, they generated the recommendations that came out of their conversation with us locally. Clearly, what I'm going to do is just do a brief update on on what the status is on the recommendations. The first recommendation was clearly to do something with, to take Court Square and to see what we could make it. The picture that you see here is the concept drawing, and concept is very preliminary piece of the planning process drawing that was generated in 2017. And we're in the process now of taking a look at, between this drawing and the community conversation about wanting to see a more active use in that area, and all the feedback we got from folks last summer and continue to get, that we're going to roll up our sleeves and take a look this spring and see what might it become. Does it become something like a full-scale pedestrian plaza, or do we find a mix where we balance the needs and uses that we need to accomplish on the site? The other thing is that the Fisk Avenue Pocket Park, several years ago, we had the Conway School of Landscape Design work with the community. They developed a pocket park design. There were some good folks who early last summer were able to build out the south end of it, which is the pollinator rain garden. And we're now working to do the balance of that site, which literally keeps the parking, but makes more green space out there to make it a much more pleasant open space, and leads as a pathway down to our premier park in downtown, which is Energy Park. But it becomes a nice very pleasant public space for people to be able to use as they're enjoying our downtown. The other thing that came about was this discussion about streetscape improvements. And, you know, as people are experiencing the downtown, there's drivers, there's bicyclists, there's pedestrians, there's people on scooters now. There's many different people who use the downtown. People walking, you know, down to get lunch somewhere. There are a lot of users in our downtown. And what does the experience feel like on Main Street? And that's what the Streetscape Improvement Plan we'll take a look at and make recommendations on. We'll be talking about, you know, street trees, sidewalk furniture. How does the signage from the stores intersect with the use of the sidewalk? Are there opportunities to make the sidewalks a little wider? Are there opportunities to do bump outs? Is there a different way we can plant the trees or have the trees, have the Main Street shaded so it's comfortable and enjoyable and that the trees survive? So the planning process will happen as we're having this conversation this summer about the revitalization plan. Part of that will be a very specific conversation about what sort of streetscape improvements should we be making. And I'll share with you, if you want an example, if you know the old Turner's Falls downtown, it had been, you know, a little run down. And several years ago, the town of Montague did a streetscape plan. And in my mind, it feels like Turner's Falls is a very different downtown now than it was 10 years ago. And part of that is thoughtful thinking about what's the street feel like? What are the elements that we have in our downtown? What does the streetscape, the lighting, the signage, the street furniture feel like? And how does that serve people who are using the downtown? So the other recommendations in the private realm, there's a recommendation that we look and work with the private sector to do some storefront improvements. We had historically had a small sign and facade program. We know it was a little challenging to use. We're actually looking at different models to make it easier to access and to use successfully. But what we also see is there's some private entities that are doing their own storefront improvements. We've just taken a look at Taylor's Tavern has just redone their whole facade on their front. And we know that really changes and feels like people are making investments in the downtown and how people feel about what's going on in the downtown. There's what they called our 100% corner, which is the intersection of Federal, Bank Row, and Main. And the consultant we worked with said that, you know, you should know that you're in Greenfield when you're sitting at the lights or when you're crossing the street at that corner. And there's some conversation about what do we need to do to give it a better sense of place and identity there. We looked at revenues and sales, really looking at a marketing initiative for downtown. We about 5 years ago, downtown became a cultural district, which gives it special standing here in the state and also provides some limited additional resources. But the folks who are on the cultural district committee have really taken the ball and run with it, working with a number of folks and other groups in the community. You know, we've started to really develop a bee brand and a dinosaur brand. And how does that play out in terms of visual cues and things that public art that's happening in our downtown? How do we capitalize on those things that make Greenfield special and share them with people who might be coming to visit us? And again, what goes with that, along with that, is as people come and visit us, we have to make sure that they can find their way, and that speaks to the signage, the wayfinding, the business directory, and some kiosks, and working to really see what we can do that once people arrive here, that they know the many things that are available in the downtown. And then the other recommendations in the administrative capacity is really to develop an organization to manage downtown programs and projects. We have several great organizations that work on things that impact the downtown. We've got the Cultural District, we've got the Progress Partnership, we've got the Greenfield Business Association, we've got my department and other departments. The rec department does a great job in terms of programming in the downtown. But the challenge is to coordinate that, and how can we get it so that it's organized, they're not on top of each other, and they actually complement each other. So we're really looking at what can we do in terms of creating an organization or a staff person, you know, who's the go-to person to know what the calendar is for downtown Greenfield, because we're starting to have more and more events, and we want first of all, those events to be successful in and of their own right, but also we want the business community to be aware of those so that they can align and take advantage of more people coming to the downtown and really promote their businesses aligned with whatever's happening in the downtown. And we saw that this past year, when the Green River Festival was at the fairgrounds and they had the free shuttles from downtown. I can't tell you, the Jim from Signature Sound said that people were so excited that with that linkage between the fairgrounds and downtown. And the thing that was so amazing is you got off the bus in front of Hawks and Reed, and there, right in front of you, you saw the whole fall schedule for what Signature Sound was bringing to Hawks and Reed. So I think there's some really important ways that we can play off of each other in terms of what's happening and how we can get the biggest bang for the buck when people come and visit and enjoy Greenfield and spend time here. The other piece is, and I know that our planning department's looking at this, is taking a look at our existing sign bylaws to make it easier and to give business owners more opportunities to have modern, current signage that's attractive and works to attract people to their businesses. And then the tenant mix, what's going on in downtown in terms of the different uses. Clearly, we want to, our First National Bank building has been one of our tasks for a while. And we made an effort to do a community use with a cultural flex space. But we discovered that wasn't going to be financially feasible. So we are now at the point where we are going to be looking for a private developer, either private for-profit or nonprofit developer, to put in a proposal on what they think that we might be able to use the First National Bank for. So we'll be issuing a request for proposal. We're planning to put that out in May of this year. And at the end of the meeting tonight, I'd like to invite you to stick around and offer any sort of comments or feedback you'd like to offer on what we should be thinking about as we're preparing that request for proposal. And then the final recommendation is really to encourage upper floor residential development. We've been talking about the need for more housing in Greenfield for a while. We also know that our downtown has great capacity to be a residential neighborhood as well as a commercial district. And we know that that's where small towns are headed. And there's a lot of energy and interest in that. The challenge is, what are the buildings? What are the properties that can become upper level residential? Clearly, we've all got our eye on what's going to happen at Wilson's. We're hoping that something might come out of that new redevelopment. But we're all very interested in wondering how we can help support the housing in the downtown. All right. So I feel like I've been talking a lot, and I'm going to what I'm going to do now is share with you about I think sometime in December, a number of the department heads, we were all talking about what was going on downtown, and we decided that we would have a meeting in early January where we got this very long map. Actually, the draft of it is right behind me on the wall. And we laid it out on Main Street, what was going on Main Street, so we could all take a look at all the different things that were in the works right now or coming down the pipeline. And we thought that was an incredibly important thing to do so that we could, first of all, coordinate and not step on top of each other as we're trying to get good works done. And also to share with the community, that we're looking at a very different Main Street in about 5 to 7 years based on what's happening right now. And there are some things that are already in construction. The library is already in construction. The fire station is on the cusp of going into construction. The skateboard park is in design. So there's a number of things that are going to be influencing the downtown. And we just wanted to make sure that we were all understanding what was going on and what his time frame was so that we could do things in a planful way. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to take a walk down Main Street from essentially from the Coleraine Street all the way to High Street. And we're going to walk that length because that is actually the underground, that's the map of the area that we've been talking about doing the Main Street Improvement Program. Some of you might have seen some maps about this discussion about how we might reconfigure and realign some of the elements on our Main Street from Coleraine Street to High Street. I want to share with you that this is a very, very preliminary map, that there is nothing that is finalized or firm. The only thing that is really in the works on this is Marlo Warner, our DPW director, is in the process of requesting some funds for some to do the early design and engineering work. There will be opportunities to have conversations about this on an ongoing basis. But the game plan is, with the Main Street Improvement Program, is really to rework Main Street between High Street and Coleraine Street. And the Main Street Improvement Program, that is the Mass DOT funded piece, will handle the surface roadway reconstruction curb to curb and anything that happens on the surface of the roadway, curb to curb. We are also having some ongoing conversations and thinking that, given that we know that our infrastructure underneath that roadway is a little elderly and maybe undersized, given what's going on and where we hope to go, and the modern demands in terms of properties needing 2 water connections, one for their sprinkler systems and one for their water connection, that there are some things that, while the road is dug up, it might make sense for us to upgrade our infrastructure underneath, our water, our sewer, our storm drainage, and as importantly, our utility conduit underneath that hopefully will bring broadband down Main Street, along with the electrical and Verizon connections that will need to happen. So that is the Main Street Improvement Program. Like I said, the driving force of this is really the roadway surface reconstruction with Mass DOT and the DPW here. But like I said, we are having conversations and making plans to see what we can do to be prepared to upgrade the infrastructure underneath while the roadway is being reconstructed. The other piece of that is that that even though the Main Street Improvement Program will go curb to curb, what we've recognized over this past year, as we've been working with the local rapid recovery consultant, is that it's really storefront to storefront that gives a sense of what your downtown environment feels like. That's why we're doing the Streetscape Improvement Plan, and that's why we're doing some of the other pieces that are in our planning documents to try to do a comprehensive feel, so we feel like a coherent downtown that's got its act together, storefront to storefront across Main Street. So I'll continue the walk. There's the picture of the new fire station. The site's been cleared, and the expected completion date for that would be fall of 2023. The other thing that's happening is where the old court was, next to the at 106 Main Street. It used to be next to my office. My old office is in 106 Main Street. But the Sheriff's Department is going to be opening up a Community Justice Support Center of Franklin County, and that's going to be opening up in the spring of this year. It will be different from the Franklin County Justice Center, which is the old courthouse. So we're actually talking with them about maybe we should find a different name for this, because it could get confusing. But that's the westernmost part of Main Street. The next piece, the next piece of Main Street really talks about what's going on with the skateboard park. We finally found a location and have a skateboard park that's going to go at the north end of the Chapman Davis lot. We're expecting we're going into design of that park this year, and hopefully into construction at the end of 2022. I'm sure Christy will correct me if I'm wrong on that, with the game plan that the park will be completed by June of 2023. Across the street, clearly, I mentioned briefly earlier, the Fisk Avenue Pocket Park, that we actually have it out to bid to hire a contractor to flip the parking out so that it's out on Miles Street, and then we have a little more green space that we'll be programming in our downtown. Clearly, Wilson's department store is on the market. Everyone has seen that. There are some active conversations happening about its future, and we'll all keep our fingers crossed that building moves forward into its next stage of life. Okay. Other things that are happening, we know that the Greenfield Community College, their downtown center, they've been struggling for the past couple of years to try to figure out what its best use would be. And they've come to the conclusion that they put it on the market. So they're going to see what the private sector might think about that. So that went on the market in the end of January. Court Square redevelopment. As I spoke before, we are looking this spring to do a design charrette to really talk about the design that we developed back in 2017 and where we are with our thinking about what its future will look like. So that will be a public process sometime this spring. First National Bank building, again, we love this building. We love how it looks over our town commons, but we all know the challenges in terms of it being an actively used building and looking for it to find its next stage in life. Then the next piece is that, once the new library is constructed, and that's construction is expected to be completed in spring 2023, we will then have the old library, which is the Levitt Hovey House, which sits between the new library and Greenfield Savings Bank. That has there's a request for proposal out. So the city's issued a request for proposal last fall. We didn't have any takers at that point. I do believe we're going to be issuing that out again to see if there's any takers. Just given, we're hoping that this presentation tonight might spur somebody's interest in being a part of what's going to be happening with the future of that building in downtown. And then again, the new library well into construction and expecting next spring 2023 to be able to open its doors and welcome the community. The other things that are happening is the Hope Street parking lot. There's been a very active community conversation with some different boards and commissions about it's currently used as the temporary fire station, but once the new fire station opens up, what would be the best use for that parking lot? Do we need the parking, or might there be some other opportunities that might present themselves? And then the Greenfield Armory was surplus by the National Guard last year. That's out, and we're trying to figure out whether or not the city's going to have a hand in helping to define its future in any way. But it is a redevelopment opportunity, and we're, like I said, the city is not interested in being the developer, but is facilitating some conversations about some parties who might be interested in seeing if they could play a role in defining its future. So when you lay all this out, it's like, wow, there's a lot of stuff happening on Main Street. And that is why we feel it's so critically important to do the update of the downtown revitalization plan right now, so that we can all be working together in the same direction to really make sure that we take the best advantage of this time. And as the mayor said, we're in a unique period. We know that there's going to be some pretty substantial public investment that's available to help further our plans of our downtown. And we've got a beautiful little downtown to start with. And our challenge is to figure out, what do we want its future to be, and how do we lay the path forward so that we get there? So I just want to go over quickly what the time frame is for where we're going on this. This February, this month, we'll be looking for feedback on what the community wants to see or would like to see, or any ideas you might have about the First National Bank building. We have a Google form that's up on the website in the link to the meeting for tonight. You can use the Google form, or you can send me an email, or you can stay on after this meeting and share your ideas. At the end of this meeting, we'll offer people the opportunity, if you want to share ideas about the First National Bank building. And then not a lot of time for robust community conversation about what you've seen. Our goal tonight was to give you the information where we are and what's out there right now, so that you can sit around your coffee table and talk with your friends and neighbors and family about it, and then participate actively in the conversation that will be happening later this spring. Clearly, if you want to come and join us at the Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee meeting on February 24th, will actually be the first real place that we have a conversation about that. I will share with you that there is an advisory board that's being pulled together that will act as a steering committee to sort of keep the downtown revitalization plan on track. But there will be many opportunities for the community to see what we're up to, engage, influence, offer feedback, and have input on it. Then this spring, we'll be doing a design workshop on the future of Court Square and what that might look like. We'll be issuing the RFP for the First National Bank building. And then, like I said, the opportunity for community input on the revitalization plan. During the summer, I don't have a date yet, but sometime early in the summer, we'll be doing a presentation on what the downtown revitalization plan looks like. And it's quite honestly pulling together what you've seen here tonight, plus a little more conversation and starting to set it down into paper as a plan with some goals and some strategies. What do we need to do? How do we need to prioritize? What do we need to prioritize to really get to where we want to go in downtown? And then in September, we'll be looking at the presentation of the final downtown revitalization plan for the community to adopt. And I do want to very specifically say that, you heard us talking about the Main Street plan, the Main Street improvement plan, and we're in the beginning of the design process on that. That is a multi-year process, and there will be public input and public hearings on the details of that as we go down the path. That will not get to 100% design in 2022. But it will be happening over, the conversations about what that's going to look like will be happening over the next year or two, and you can weigh in at those points. So, I've said my piece. So I'm going to open it up for questions and answers. And Lindsay Rowe has been monitoring the chat. And is going to handle the questions, pull the questions out and feed them to us.
All right, MJ, people haven't had a chance yet really to pop questions in, but we're going to give them a minute to do that. Hannah is going to introduce the SGIC members who are on the call right now, because people might want to know who's on this committee in case they want to go have a conversation with them. So this SGIC stands for the Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee, and Hannah can give you more information.
Thank you so much, Lindsay, and thank you, Becca, for reminding me to do this, because I would love to, I'd really love for everyone to introduce themselves if everyone is into it very quickly. Again, I'm Hannah Rechtshaffen. I'm the chair of the Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee. I live in Greenfield. This master plan was actually one of the reasons I chose Greenfield when I moved back to the area, because I'm that kind of planning nerd. And I'm going to hand it off to the first person I see, which is Nancy. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, Hannah. Thank you so much. I'm Nancy Hazard, and I was involved in the master planning process in 2013 and have been very involved in Green and Greenfield for many years and lived here for over 40 years now.
Great, thank you. George?
Thank you, Hannah. George Tolumsis. I'm the planning board representative on the SGIC and the vice chair.
Great. Carol?
Hi, I'm Carol Collins. I'm the Director of Energy and Sustainability, and I've been with the city since before the master planning process started, and it's great to see everyone tonight. Thank you.
Phil?
Phil Elmer. I'm the city council representative on the committee, which is a great committee.
Marlo?
Yes, I'm the Director of Public Works for the city as a representative to the committee. I've worked for the city approximately 24 years, except for 2 years of that I was away. So I watched a lot of this develop, and it's really cool, and I'm glad to be involved with it.
MJ, do you want to introduce yourself as part of the committee?
I sit on the Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee as the designate from the planning director. And I've worked for the city since December 2015, and first in community development and then taking on the economic development piece, and think that we have a great downtown and a great community that rolls its sleeves up and gets engaged and gets things done. So
Thank you. Lindsay, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Lindsay Rowe. I'm the Community Development Administrator and I guess the current MC for the moment. So we're moving on to questions. And so from Susan Wargafnik, she's wondering, will there be meetings in between to concentrate on specific aspects of the plan? For instance, the Hope Street parking lot.
I guess I get to answer that, correct? So the downtown revitalization plan will be a big picture plan, meaning what's happening in our downtown, what are different elements. It's like with sustainable Greenfield implementation, the implementation committee is each of us tend to take our own little piece of it and advance it. And that's what I expect will happen with the downtown revitalization plan is that there'll be an overarching downtown revitalization plan. Different projects and different initiatives will be in that plan. And what happens with that will be whoever sort of steps up to the plate and wants to advocate and advance that would be leading that after the plan happens. But I think it's important to understand how these are all these projects are happening together and how they're going to influence and impact. So Susan, I hope that answers your question. There won't be a specific work group on that unless somebody decides that they want to pick up that ball and run with it.
If I can just ask, would that mean something like a community group could hold a meeting to talk about that, and that would be part of the process and would be seen as part of the process, or is it something have to be initiated out of the city?
I would suspect that if there's a specific project that we're talking about, that there will be opportunity to comment back on it in any way, but we will end up with a plan that will be hopefully specific enough but vague enough so that it can move forward. And like I said, I think that once you have a plan that gets adopted, and the idea is to get everybody on the same page in terms of thinking that this is a good idea. And so that won't necessarily happen in the context of the downtown revitalization plan, but the conversation will start, and I'm sure will continue after the downtown revitalization plan is implemented or started to be implemented. Okay.
MJ, your next question is, Judy Raper would love to hear more about the Justice Center. What is the mission and purpose of the space? Any more information you have about that?
So there's two justice centers. There's the old courthouse, which serves the function of being the old courthouse. And then there's the new one, the new site at 106 Main Street, which is being run by the sheriff's office. And my understanding is that's where probation will operate out of and work with people who are in probation and help them get connected to services. The person I would refer you to is Ed Hayes over at the sheriff's office. I think the idea is to have some sort of community space where people can access resources that's not on the site of the jail itself and it's not in the courthouse, that it will be a more community-based justice center. And I just thought people should know about it because I was surprised. I found out about it 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. They talked about doing this a couple of years ago, and it sounds like it's into construction and it's going to be opening up in the spring.
Great. Jan Mahar wants to put the word out about her nonprofits, specifically says that 3 nonprofits at the Crossroads put well over $200,000 into the local economy last year, but went into about $30,000 of debt plus $100,000 of in-kind services. We'd love particular attention to the arts, education, and humanities and nonprofits for stabilization. And I don't know if you have any information on nonprofit stabilization coming up.
Me, nothing new. Nothing new to report.
All right. Greg asks, curious what kind of sign guidelines you hope to develop in this process and what resources we have now for guiding public and private wayfinding and signage.
Well, on the sign piece, is Eric here tonight? The planning director handles the sign. There he is.
He was earlier.
Well, Eric, we'll toss that sign question to you.
Sure, I'd be glad to answer it. So the planning board has initiated a zoning change to that section of the zoning ordinance, and there is a joint public hearing scheduled for February 17th on those proposed amendments. And, you know, we listened to what the report said, and we made it so that it's very clear what kind of signage you can have. It wasn't clear you could do it on the upper stories. So if you were a tenant on the second story, it wasn't clear if you could have a sign. We made that very clear you can. We also made it clear that if you're on a corner on two streets, that you can have signage on both sides so that you're not limited in visibility. So a few things like that to tweak our sign ordinance to make it more usable and friendly for the downtown. And come to the public hearing on February 17th at 6 p.m.
Lindsay, I could add something to that. We recently received a grant, a very small grant, as grants go, but it was what it was. We had expected more to establish a business directory and enhance further the wayfinding signs that we already have. We also have a grant application out through the Massachusetts Office of Tourism that's combined with the Franklin County Fairgrounds to also have additional signage for more appropriately on the west end of town for people coming off of 91 and coming off of 91, so that they kind of know where downtown Greenfield is, they know where the fairgrounds is, and it'll all be in conjunction with what we already have done for wayfinding. So we have some work going on that. I have a feeling we're going to need to do some more, of course. But so it's all of a piece, and we have to piece together the funding for it. And we've been able to do that, or well, we hope we have. We haven't heard from the Massachusetts Office of Tourism yet, but it was a good grant, and I have my fingers crossed on it.
Excellent. Thanks, Mayor. Becca King asks, can you tell us something about the efforts being made to obtain the money to make this plan an actual manifestation? So I think the question is, what are the funding sources behind it in order to fund all of these ambitious projects?
You want to take that, Mayor, or you want me to?
Well, you know some of it. I know some of it. Why don't you head out on it? Thanks.
Well, the pieces that I know are how we use our community development block grant funds. And as I was talking about the Main Street Improvement Program, one of the things that we can use our CDBG funds to do is address issues that contribute to slum and blight. I know that sounds awful, but our downtown is actually a designated slum blight district, which sounds miserable, but it actually gives us a little more flexibility in using our block grant monies. And that's what we're really we're hopeful that as we see how we're moving forward with the Main Street improvements, like I said, if we're going to be digging up the road, it makes sense to really take a look at what's underneath that, and to also use that block grant money so that we're laying the future for downtown and for the confidence in the private property owners whose properties line Main Street, that we're doing our part with the public infrastructure so that they can do their part with the private development. So the CDBG funds are really critically important as part of this. Again, we pull together funding wherever we can, Mass DOT shared streets, a little urban agenda money, a little mass travel and tourism money. We're always scrambling and seeking any opportunity to find resources to implement this. The mayor has recently brought on staff, a grant writer, to help sort of coordinate and do the writing of that, and that's going to be helpful so that all the different departments can help can access those public resources. And my goal, my hope is that by using our CDBG funds, and the mayor can speak to the ARPA funds, just strategically how we can set ourselves in good stead to have shovel-ready plans ready, so that we are much more competitive at the time that the infrastructure money that's will be coming out from the federal government becomes available. So that we're ready to move on it. We know what we've got, we know what we need to do, we know more or less what it's going to cost, so that we put ourselves in a competitive position to be able to access those resources. So.
Thank you, MJ. It's funny how they use the ugliest words to describe the most positive outcomes. They do. So sounds like we are stuck with, whether we are or not. But we'll take it because it means there is money available for us. So yes, ARPA has a lot of restrictions, and they finally gave us the final rule with some actually more relaxed restrictions, if there is such a thing. So I'm sort of thumbing through those, but there's definitely some opportunity to use some American Rescue Plan money if and when we need it for many of these plans. Not all of them, but for instance, the infrastructure money. I mean, what we're trying to do isn't all above ground, as I'm so fond of saying. In order to have a workable community, as you all experienced last summer, in order for us to have a workable community that attracts new development, that works for all of us, our underground infrastructure has to work. So our water, our sewer, and so forth. So that's definitely where ARPA funding, both from the state and the feds, who have a heck of a lot more of it than I do, can come in handy. So we're taking steps to put ourselves hopefully in position to receive some of that money. It is very competitive. There's 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts, so everybody wants a piece of it, but we're going to do our part.
Great. Kendra Sarvati asks, can you please share more details about what options were explored for the First National Bank building and why a city and community option isn't feasible?
Sure, I'm happy to speak to that. The city acquired the property from first of all, the Franklin County CDC worked for several years to try to find a viable reuse for that property, and it's a challenging property. Mm-hmm. The Greenfield Redevelopment Authority took ownership of it about 5 years ago with the hope that it would become a cultural, flexible performance venue space in our downtown. And it's interesting because as we were exploring that option, other things started to emerge in the downtown. There was, a Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee was talking about the need for more entertainment venues in the downtown. And we actually saw some private parties step up to the plate. We have Hawks and Reed, we have the Pushkin, we have 10 Forward, we have, Garden Cinema has a new lease on life because, people saw that there was a lot of interest in more of that type of activity happening. So when we looked at the First National Bank, we had to look at the structure and the cost of bringing it up to modern code. And then we had to look at the financial feasibility of running something that would be community nonprofit based in a way that it wouldn't be an ongoing financial burden for the town to keep alive. And we found that wasn't workable. That over the last couple of years, like I said, here in Greenfield specifically, but also in the broader region, there have been other uses that have come in and sort of filled the need that we were feeling that we wanted the First National Bank to fill. So we've got Jaduke and the Shea Theater and, like I said, the other things in downtown Greenfield that were really starting to fill in. And so there was a sense that it wouldn't be unique. It wouldn't stand alone as itself and be able to be financially feasible. So with that, that's why we've decided to put it out to the private sector. We have had a couple of one-off conversations with private sector folks about possible uses for that, but we'll be issuing out the request for a proposal to see what might its next life be. because we do not want it to sit empty any longer. It has sat empty long enough. And if you want more detail, there are reports on the feasibility of both the public space, the performance venue space that we were talking about, and also the cost of upgrading the structure. And I can certainly make those available to you.
Thanks, MJ. Nancy Hazard wonders if you could say more about upper story renovation. Is there a good inventory of empty spaces? And does it look as if there's new money to help building owners renovate those spaces?
Thanks, Nancy. That's kind of a question for, I think, both MJ and I. Yes, there's money for that. There's definitely a grant program specifically called underutilized and upper story development. Actually, that's not quite the right name, but long day. But there is definitely grant money available. Mass Development also has programs that sort of speak to that for both public and private developers and so forth. So it's a little bit of a treasure hunt to find the right mix. As an example, was interested in the possibility of utilizing some grant money to make some of the necessary repairs on the existing library once it's vacated, because as we know, it has many needs and it is still owned by the city. So, but certain grants that we were looking at wanted you to have a historical an inventory, a survey. So because it's a historical building. So you have to kind of navigate the hoops of these grants, but that's why I have hired a wonderful grant writer who was here earlier. I don't know if Athena is still here or not, but Athena is our new grant writer, and she's been here since October. She's been helping out with a number of other grants and is getting up to speed. So that's my 2 cents worth on upper story redevelopment. And of course, there's always private developers. That's the realm. It's not the city that necessarily needs to, well, we'd love to be able to, but that is an expensive proposition. So there's always private developers, and we're hoping that we can entice a private developer to do some of that in some of our buildings.
Right. And there are some real challenges with upgrading old buildings. We have handicap accessibility, you have sprinkler system requirements now, and the one of the biggest challenges, and I know the Greenfield Business Association has been hosting a conversation with their membership about it, is that requirement that when you make an investment in a property and it's more than 30% of the assessed value, that it triggers full code compliance. And how do we manage that good intention with the market realities and what it costs to upgrade these buildings? And that's a very active conversation.
Great. The next question from Nikki Sauber asks, is there any thought of putting a sign indicating how many spaces are currently available in the parking garage? I think there's a similar sign in Northampton.
There is a lot of discussion about parking. In fact, I'll plug the Greenfield Business Association is having a forum on parking on Thursday evening. In terms of that level of specificity, we haven't gotten to that level of specificity. I think that we're more concerned about making sure that there's, what's the demand for parking, and how do we best manage it to serve both the businesses and the user in downtown and the upper level, the upper level development that we hope to encourage also. How do we find a nice balance?
So sorry, MJ, I didn't mean to talk over you.
No,
I can share with Ms. Sauber that all of the permitted spaces in the parking garage are filled for the first time ever. So I can't remember exactly how many that is, but permits have been sold and and are being utilized. So that's I think a step in the right direction. The parking czarina, Chief of Staff Danny Letourneau, is on vacation this week, so she could have certainly given you plenty of information on that. She chose a good week weather-wise to leave. But we could have used her this evening and probably at the parking forum.
Great. Isaac Mass wonders, do we know how much the CPA is generating and how it will be spent?
Do we have a CPA member on here? I can't recall everybody who's on here.
Yeah, I can.
There's Susan. Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
I can say that we don't have a solid number yet, but we're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $190,000 from Greenfield's money, and then there's state money that comes in, and so we're looking roughly at about $250,000 for this first year. It may be a little more, it may be a little less, but around that number. And in terms of the planning, we are right in the middle of developing applications and guidelines and scoring systems and all of that. And since we won't have any money until next fall, until July, earliest is July 1, we'll have any idea of what the money is. It'll be, our plan is around the fall to be able to have a process begun where we'll have applications out and we'll have a review process. And so I would guess sometime around this time next year would be the first actual, first money would actually go into people's hands.
Thank you, Susan.
So much knowledge on this. This is great. Alyssa LaRose, it's more of a comment, but says it'd be great to coordinate wayfinding with the John Ulver Transit Center and FRTA to include signage at the kiosk, at the bus and train platforms to direct people up the hill to downtown. All right, and then back to questions. Amy and Doug Clark ask, does this plan extend down side streets off Main Street? And are there any opportunities for affordable housing there?
Oh, go ahead, Mayor.
Well, I was just going to say, I'm not sure what she means by this plan. I don't know if it's the Main Street plan, which no, is strictly Main Street. And our affordable housing opportunities are already, some of them are on the side streets, but or at least in terms of our shelters and our homeless shelters. So I think that, thank you, Amy, is a work in progress for sure. But it's something that I always think about because of other places I've lived and been to. The urban center isn't just the main drag, so to speak, the main center, the main street. It does filter into the neighborhoods. So as we begin to develop more firm plans, I guess is the word I'm looking for, as to how to expand out from Main Street and what we are traditionally talking about now as downtown revitalization. We will be definitely looking at other ways to utilize some of the properties that are off onto our side streets.
Thank you. Erin Donnelly Drake says, glad to hear about some wayfinding efforts to bring visitors off on 91 to the downtown and potentially improving streetscape and business district past Coleraine Street west to the Rotary. What is the update on the large vacant property on Route 2 and Minor Street?
I'm sorry, who asked that question? I just wanted to be able to address them. Well, it's okay. By naked property, I assume you mean the large dirt field of where the hotel used to be. Well, if you go back that far in Greenfield, which I do, former site of Howard Johnson's and the roadway in. But we have a developer who owns that property, or there is a developer who owns that property. And sorry, I didn't realize I was off video. There's a developer who owns that property, and he will be developing it. He has a two-phase plan. He's actually starting with phase 2 first, and he will be developing some retail development at that site. I do not know the specifics yet. It keeps changing as to which type of retail, but he's definitely moving forward. I think he has been to the planning board or is scheduled to be at the planning board.
Great. Mary McClintock follows up on Amy's question. The revitalization plan focuses wider. What is the housing planned as part of revitalization?
I think that, that the revitalization plan is a conversation that starts, and that one element of that conversation as we move through the planning process will be, how does housing play into this? Clearly, we've already had a brief conversation about the community thinking about the Hope Street lot and whether or not that might be an appropriate site for housing down the line. What happens? Is there a way to encourage upper level residential development along our main street? What are the challenges to that? So there's not a specific plan at the moment, but housing will absolutely be a part of the conversation as we're developing the downtown revitalization plan update. Mm-hmm.
All right, there was a question that was asked in the chat that has been answered, which is, what are CPA funds? But it did occur to me that maybe someone mentioned their Community Preservation Act funds, but this is a new thing in Greenfield. Does someone want to give a quick 1 or 2 minute about, or shorter, about what it is?
Take it away, Susan.
Okay. CPA, there is a very, very small amount of money that is on the property tax bill that goes to 4 things: historic preservation, recreation, open space, and housing. There are very specific rules around how that can be used. The state law is very, very specific about what it can be used for, and I won't go into all those little things, as we'll be dealing with that when we're going to do open meetings this spring, and people can come and ask all their specific questions then. But the basic stuff is that it is an effort to put some new funds that are specifically geared toward those areas into play here in town, and we hope to be able to do that this fall.
Great, thank you so much, Susan. All right, that has come to the end of the questions people have written in the chat. Is there anyone who has been unable to write a question in the chat but still has a question? Feel free to unmute yourself now and ask the question quickly. All right, hearing none, I will turn it back over to MJ to wrap us up.
Great. And I just want to do a real shout out. Lindsay, thank you so much for handling the question and answers. And thank you to the members of the audience who stepped forward with information about their specific expertise. We really appreciate that. And thank you all for being here this evening. Like you saw, there's a lot of things that are going on, and we're stepping back out and trying to figure out how to re-engage in a community planning process, hopefully so we can be shoulder to shoulder rather than video tube to video tube later this year. And so what I'd like to do is welcome anybody who wants to stay on board with this meeting, because I'm going to shift gears and we're going to talk very specifically about what's going on with the First National Bank. I want to offer people the opportunity to participate and offer your feedback and ideas about what you think or concerns that you have about it here. But I also want to offer you the opportunity that there's a Google form, a link to a Google form on the the calendar that announces on the town calendar where this meeting was announced, that you can hop in and just fill in the form there. That's a way that you'd prefer to do it. Or if you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning with a brilliant idea and there's no one on Zoom to talk to still, that you can still get your ideas, and that we'll be accepting those until February 10th. And we are actually working with Mass Development, who's offered us a consultant who's going to help us craft that request for proposal so that we get it out there and we're able to see some movement, hopefully, on the First National Bank building living into its next new life once we get an idea of what that might be. So that said, I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to put my screen back up so you can see the questions about the First National Bank. And I'll be honest with you, I was thinking originally that we just would run through this whole meeting and do the feedback and then do questions and answers. But I really appreciate people's flexibility in terms of working with this format. And like I said, very much looking forward to the time when we'll be back in person together doing this shoulder to shoulder. So that said, I would like to offer anyone up the opportunity to share the question, any answers you might have to the questions. They are, what would you like to see happen with the First National Bank building? What should the city/GRA, which is the Greenfield Redevelopment Authority, keep in mind about the building and its surroundings as we put out our request for proposal? And is there anything else you'd like to share? You can write it in the chat, you can speak it because this meeting is being recorded, or like I said, you can hop onto the Google form if you'd like. So that said, I'm gonna open it up and
MJ, it's Mary McClintock. I just went to the website to try and get the information, the link for the Google form, and it's a broken link. So at least the page that I found, that is, yeah, the page I found, it, which is like a whole page, like a deliberate downtown growing by design and da-da-da-da. And then it says, we welcome your comments here. It's a Google form. And
I see that too, Mary. I'm going to see if I can fix that while MJ gives her presentation. And hopefully in the next few minutes, we'll have it fixed. Thanks for noticing.
Yeah, thank you.
all right. Well, the answer to that is I don't have a separate presentation on the First National Bank. That this was really an opportunity for folks to start to share feedback. So what I'll say is that I will put the questions up. Where is it? Okay. Boom. There. So those are the questions, and I'm happy to hear anybody. People can talk or people can write in the chat, whatever you feel most appropriate. Susan, I see your hand up.
Yes, I have. There's a question that I have just around the building. I was on the CDC board when the building was bought and when a lot of the work was done to keep it from falling apart. It's got extraordinarily high ceilings, and I'm just wondering, from what you've talked to architects or engineers or anybody, is there a way to make that building, multi-leveled and, so that it can be used as not just one big hall, and with some stuff in the basement, because there are some interesting rooms in the basement. Has that been, explored and thought through a little bit?
Yeah. Thank you, Susan, for that question. One of the challenges is that building has a historic preservation restriction on it that speaks to the character of the inside of the building being an open, expansive space. So that's one of the questions that we are asking our consultant to help us sort through, is what sort of flexibility is there in adjusting what the inside of that building looks like, especially since it's under the historic preservation restriction. So.
Thank you.
This is Nancy Hazard. I have a similar kind of question. it sounds like it's impossible, but I'll just put it out there. Um, I've always wondered if it was possible to uh, save the front facade and do something completely different for the rest of the building, the way the courthouse was handled.
I think there are an infinite number of possibilities with that building. Clearly, what we saw from the engineering report is because of the seismic code requirements, one of the challenges is holding up that heavy roof up over, a wide open expanse. So the question might be, do we keep the facade and demolish the building that's behind it and build something that is more manageable given current code? So that is one of the ideas that has been floating around. And there's also been the idea of, do we just hang on to the facade? Because the facade is a pretty solid granite stacked block. Do we keep the facade and demolish the building behind it and create some sort of interesting urban outdoor space that's enclosed by a granite facade and a couple of buildings? So I think there's a range of possibilities. I think the first thing that we wanted to do, though, is that the project was clearly a publicly driven project that was very much focused in supporting our cultural resources here in the downtown. And so the next piece is that since it doesn't support that particular use, are there some good private or nonprofit uses that might want to look at using that space? I will share with you, it's a challenging space where it sits and how it's situated, with very little access from the rear, very limited access from the front. And so there are some real challenges to building something in that space. But, the private sector and the nonprofit sector are pretty creative sometimes. So before we moved forward and did any sort of demolition or contemplated that, we wanted to see if there were other ideas out there that might come to be.
Isaac Mass has a hand up.
Thank you, MJ. When you're talking about the park area or the demo proposal, I just have some concerns about that, and I don't have an answer for what's going to happen with the First National Bank building. But I'm concerned that that building abuts the side of my building, and let me just say it this way, it's an attractive nuisance already for graffiti and other people who are congregating, trying to break into the second story. And we're obviously dealing with all of those issues, but it also abuts the neighboring property, has very nice residential balconies over the top in the back of that area. And I can tell you, because I see them out there all the time, the residents really enjoy that space. I worry because the back of my building, which goes sort of towards the back of the recorder building along the parking garage, is not super visible to the street. And I worry if we create an area, it's already got a lot of people who sort of walk through and hang out, who probably it's not the ideal place for them to be. I'm wondering if we're attracting people to a place where there might be crime and vandalism and other things that we can't monitor if we create that. That's my primary concern. I do also want to thank you for moving the porta potty out to in front of the park, in front of the parking garage on the side. We really haven't had any problems since that happened. So those, that's a challenging area, and I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
It is a challenging area. I won't disagree with you on that. And like I said, the idea this evening and the next couple of days is to get any sort of community feedback about the uses or the possible uses or ideas for the First National Bank building. And it's wide open in terms of what people are thinking. And like we said, though, there will be an opportunity for us to kick around the ideas and decide what makes sense to put out in our request for proposal and the things that we're concerned about and also interested in seeing. So Pamela Goodwood.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to listen in and see what's going on. I apologize, but I couldn't be here for the first hour. I don't have a lot of information or input about the First National Bank. I just want to say that, I love this city that I was born in, and it was a town back then. And I don't think it's up to us to try to police people's behavior when we're talking about rebooting the downtown. And I think we need a lot of pedestrian areas that are wonderful, and walking behind private areas that are public areas. In essence, that's just the way a town is. We've got blind spots, and we've got other spots, and we've got parks that we've created. And I just don't think we can, people go in and out of the parking garage. I frequently was using the porta potty. Now I guess I don't know where it is. So I just feel like, based on the previous comments, that we're going to do the best we can for all of the people in the city of Greenfield. And I would love to see, a lot of cool things being done, as you have heard me speak about in the past. So I'll shut up now. But that's what I think. We just need to work with everybody all around. And I am here because of the housing problem. I'm very, very active on housing, and I'm glad that they're not freezing and we've opened up shelters. But that's my forte in this city, is trying to correct the housing problem. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you. And like I said earlier, we had mentioned that if people want to sort of roll up their sleeves and have a more animated conversation about the materials we presented this evening, we absolutely welcome you to join us at the Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee meeting on February 24th, where we'll be sharing our ideas and talking about everything that we heard and talked about this evening.
Thank you. I'll write that down.
And just so you know that this meeting has been recorded, so you can go back. We'll have it posted on the community development webpage, so you can go back and recapture that first hour that you missed, Pamela.
Thank you so much. Did you say the 21st or 24th?
The 24th of February is the Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee.
Thank you.
Yep.
Will that be over Zoom or will that be in person?
Hannah, can you answer that?
Yes, it will be over Zoom still, and you can find the link for that on the Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee page on the town website.
Okay. And if still have a minute for a comment or two, I don't have questions about what to do with the First National Bank building. I can see why there are so many challenges about it. There isn't parking near it. It's on a slant, and practically speaking, if the city gave it to somebody who was committed to developing that building within the restrictions that apply to it, I say, go for it. I've been around here since 1997. I live on Chapman Street, so I walk in and out of the center of town a lot. And, it's sad to see a building that was at one time so useful and in the center of the city and looking good being just this empty space that's, for the most part, just getting worse. And it's just very impractical. And I could say so much more about that and other things, but maybe I'll attend that meeting on the 24th. And thanks a lot.
Great. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Astronauta Gamsey. I have a small business on Main Street called Goose. And I'll have been there 5 years in this coming April. And thank you, MJ. That was a informative session. As far as the building goes, just to get ideas started, I'm sure you already have some, but I've been impressed by what they did in East Hampton with that Mill 180 space. And I know since in the 5 years I've been here, I've come across so many people who have wonderful art or products or things, but they just, for whatever reason, can't have their own storefront business going. And I wondered if there might be an opportunity to use it as a space for like revolving pop-ups, you know, so that these people, you know, you can give it a chance, you know, see how your business does for, you know, a 6-month period. And then if it's doing well, you maybe segue into one of the many empty storefronts in Greenfield, you know, some sort of creative space that could, you know, generate revenue in a retail sense, but, you know, doesn't have to be super permanent. That's just what came to mind, just to get the ideas rolling.
Great. Thank you. I know there's been a lot of interest in doing just that, just the pop-ups for people who might not be able to do storefronts. We, you know, at Jingle Fest, the Pushkin did a great little pop-ups that were just, it was amazing. I went through it, and you know, there's actually, I think, 3 levels of building there that were just pretty amazing with all the little pop-up shops. The challenge we have with First National Bank, and if you read the engineering report, you'll see it, is just that the building isn't considered safe to be occupied. We're not allowed to use it because of that there's no seismic bracing in it. So that's our real challenge is we can't let these little things go on in there because it's not, the building inspector won't let us use it because it doesn't meet code. That said, your idea about the pop-up shots, I think, is a real interesting one, and one that's had some pretty active conversation around the downtown. So thank you for that. Not seeing any more hands up, but I'm gonna, I think that what I'll do, since it's almost 20:08, and I really appreciate people who joined us and stuck with us this whole time. Like I said, thank you so much for coming out and learning all about all the things that are in the works in downtown, and thank you for your feedback. And again, we will get the link corrected for the Google Docs, and I'm going to trust that Lindsay's going to sort that out and get it up onto our website so that people will be able to access it without a problem tomorrow and the day after. And we thank you and hope we might see you on the 24th, the Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee. So good night, all. And thank you. And thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Hannah.